Hi everyone, and this is next episode of Pyjama Talks, episodes where we talk about pajamas and not only pajamas. And today my guest is Vitaly Sharovatov. Hi Vitaly.
Hello there.
And Vitaly is DevRel and consultant at Qase. And Vitaly, so Qase, what's the case and what do you do there?
So I do DevRel in Qase, so I help the company to properly communicate with developers around the world to see their needs and to satisfy their needs and provide value for our beloved clients. And also I consult the company with processes related to software development.
And the company itself, so what the company does?
Yeah, so Qase does TMS, which is test management system, but it's based on a true test ops philosophy where we think that developers are the ones who control the quality and who maintain the quality of the software, the ones who should be responsible for that. And QA engineers can help with that. QA engineers can teach developers how to properly do the quality. But then it's more about philosophy, similar to DevOps movement, you know about that as well.
If testing and quality is another thing that developers should do, so why do we need QA, dedicated QA, or do we?
QA engineers usually have a very specific mindset. They break things. Developers create things. So QA engineers can show peculiar ways which break the software that developers create, so that developers are more aware of how their software works, and so that it will just help developers do the software better.
Today, let's talk about a little bit about some old Russian, I would say, even Soviet tradition or like a process that can be quite new to people around the globe. Maybe not for Asians, for Japan people, but for people in many countries, they didn't know about it probably. So tell a little bit about rationalization of work.
Soviet Union started as the dictatorship of the proletariat. So the labormen, the workers were the top priority for the country, for the government. And it meant that every labor person, every worker was to take part in the manufacturing process, was to take a significant part in the manufacturing process. So he or she should not be dictated what to do, but rather they should also provide feedback on the process and how to improve it, etc. If you, as a person who works in a conveyor or in a factory, and you want to improve something, you need to propose the improvement proposition in a certain way. So you have to analyze the current state of affairs, why you think you need to improve something, what problem you consider there is. And then you come up with a proposition and you analyze pros and cons of this proposition and the price it takes to install this new proposition. If we come with analogy from our world, it's not the team that just votes, let's take Angular or React. No, they compare the pros and cons of each framework against the context which they work in, against the business model, the main model, and then only then they implement one or another.
Workers, they obviously they want to work less and to get more money. It's not true all the time, but just imagine it like this. And all these propositions or all these suggestions, they suggest to change something. And for me, as a like, just imagine average worker, what's the point for me to bring this innovation, to bring this, because it's changed everything, or not maybe not everything, but what's for me as an average, I don't know, conveyor guy, why should I do that?
Let's say in a team of software developers, you have blame culture where everyone is punished for thinking rather than coding, then you won't have any innovation. So in the Soviet Union, at least when it started, people who worked at factories and facilities, they did think and they did know that they owned the production, the overall company, the overall manufacturing facility. And so they had intrinsic motivation to improve things. People were happy. So people wanted to change. People wanted their manufacturing facility to become better. Usual thing in our IT world, where developers come up with curiosity, they come to a manager or to the team and say, I want to try, let's say, Dockerize our environment.
Yeah.
Let's try this. And the manager says, not sure, we have deadlines soon, we have this or that. Manager is bad. He's considered bad, retrograde, Ludit almost. He doesn't want to improve anything. So the team and manager separates them. So they have negative social dynamics in the team.
If you want to change something across 10 teams, it's 10 times more different and more hard. So how to solve this? Because usually, changes within 2 people, easily.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we work differently. But how to solve this friction inside the organization?
You know that almost every product company now tries to work in small product teams, working on a set, almost isolated scope of a product, so that team can fully function within that scope. Managers tend to isolate teams so that there is less friction. So it's less coupling, but more, teams are more decoupled from each other. Similar things we do in our engineering work. We try to decouple teams. It's only a matter of a few things to agree on between the team. Let's say how our infra is done. So let's say we go to cloud. Fine, everyone needs to go to cloud now. We can't have collocated or dedicated server and the cloud. It's going to be hurtful for our overall infrastructural costs. And so it's only a few things that you need to actually agree on, and then you can gather all your team members and show them a rationale for why the changes are actually triggered, implemented.
If we again return back to Soviet era, big huge factor is that we're melting iron, doing some huge stuff, huge mechanical things. So back in the days, this rational process worked because of the big numbers. I mean, if you say, okay, right now we are using this tool to screw the bolt, and if we use different tool, we can save 1 second of the time. And if we count this to amount of people worked, and of course we can save a lot of money.
Yeah.
But if we jump back to IT, to tech world, and if we have these separate teams, and this process, does it mean that we're moving in completely different directions? So we're trying to separate teams because we can change things easily with separate teams, but those changes, they make no sense because it doesn't scale up to all the engineers in the world or in the organization.
I see. So our limitation is people now, not the production time or electricity or anything else. And so if we rationalize according to this limitation, so if we try to understand how different changes make it easier for us to develop code and maintain quality, then we're doing a good job. So we can still rationalize. We just rationalize, okay, with automatic tests, we make less human mistakes, human errors. That's fine. We say, okay, we had so many regressions, it costed us so much money in terms of clients in terms of us losing clients. And so if we try automatic tests to cover our functionality, maybe it will improve the overall cognitive load for us and overall stress will be less. Coming back to big numbers, Soviet times were planned times. So we had 5 years plans. It wasn't agile at all. So big numbers could actually accumulate. In our days, we can't accumulate so much information. We just we change things more often. So the main, I would say, pro of the rationalization process here, of rationalization culture here in IT, is that we start thinking rationally, start thinking and communicating more rationally. So it's not a I against you in our voting for technology. No, it's actually I and you analyzing the arguments and counter arguments that we both provide.
Let's imagine me as a developer. I'm saying, okay, we have code review. For me as a developer, I don't get why we have it because we're spending 10%
30%,
of
30% more often.
Over the time, just reviewing the code. And for me, I have a gut feeling. I don't have exact numbers. It's not useful, and we just spend money and time. So how to work with this process?
Actually, I had this. I was invited into a company as a consultant, and I had exactly this case where developers approached a team lead time after time, asking why the hell do we have so many code reviews. They actually had 2 code reviews for each feature. So 1 code review, then if it's approved, a second one needs to be approved. So a feature took 3 days to develop and 4 or 5 days to actually be deployed after development phase was done. So because maybe some changes needed to be done. So what we did, we with developers sat and actually checked our Jira, where we had statistics when the tasks were moved back to development, why they were moved back to development. So we spent one day, we gathered stats that almost all of the cases where the feature was brought back to development were, let's say, stylistic. So we went to a team lead and actually told him, mate, do you want to see our stats? So within the last month, we spent X number of hours on code reviews. Our time to market was this. So our average time on code review, waiting for code review, was higher than the development time. And so we had these numbers. Do you want to try removing code review as an experiment for the next month and see how our statistics show up later?
I would say, okay, maybe last month you haven't, all the changes were stylistically. But first of all, it doesn't mean that in the future we will not reject right commit because it was bad. Second, if, for example, we have juniors in our team, so they definitely should have code review because they will push something wrong on the prod. So statistic data doesn't prove that in the future we will not get
Actually, it's interesting. It doesn't prove that we will not get defects, no, of course, but it shows that for the last month the number of defects was 0. Yeah. Meaning that even if we have 1 defect next month or 2 defects, it's a statistically very minimal problem. Schuchart had these criterions of understanding where a problem is common or peculiar to this particular example. So that if we, let's say, have downtime one time, if we cause downtime to production one time a year, it doesn't economically mean, there is no economical incentive for us to make our process twice slower. Proper education system is where people are first shown the theory, then they are guided through this theory in practical work, and only then their level of appropriation of data or information is checked in some exams, tests, or whatever. So essentially, a junior needs a mentor or a tutor pair programming with him for quite a while until a junior can actually provide code of the quality that we demand.
If you have some statistical data behind anything, that's good. But what if we want to rationalize something that's not so obvious? Because, for example, when we have code review, I can calculate how much time we spent on it. But what if I have something that's not so easily...
I have an example.
Yeah.
Previous place of work, I came and joined the company with a contract where they allowed me to verify my hypothesis. My hypothesis was that they could be taught within 2 months to become almost kind of middle developers with only 2 hours per day of an attention from a senior Java developer, because I am not a Java developer. I cannot teach Java. And so that was my hypothesis, that was the experiment. The rationalization behind the experiment was easy. Economically, it was very beneficial both for the company and for the guys and girls whom I taught and then employed. Because for the guys, I gave them the proper stipendiate, or whatever it's called, like the money when they teach them, that they could survive on it. And the company saved quite a fortune on their salaries because they started gaining value only after 3 months of the guys and girls being present in the company. So that is a rationalization why my hypothesis, my experiment could have been successful. So basically, I came up with this idea. The guys said, okay, we're spending this amount of money on this experiment. In the worst case, we get this. In the best case, we get that.
Obviously, in companies, we have people more energetic, less energetic, more careless, less careless. Like in general, how to solve problems and get rid of the ineffective processes, like, for example, cargo cult. In general, because for me, so far, it looks like, yes, Vitaly can achieve everything, but what if someone maybe less like pushy or less energetic want to do the same, save some money or optimize something?
I think that people should be hired for curiosity, because curiosity drives this incentive to change something. And then, if provided with proper tools or approaches, people will actually do something. The approach that I tend to teach people, and I'm running this approach here at Qase at this moment, is very simple. So we go through every bit of a process, so be it daily stand-up, be it retrospective, be it manual testing phase, be it coding phase, be it hypothesis verification on the product side, or customer development phase, or customer support phase, whatever. Every single bit of a process. So there are lots of processes, parallel, multidimensional processes, processes that influence each other. So let's say if we have a downtime on production, we won't have daily meeting. And the very important thing that I have is expiry time. So I set expiry on every card of every bit of a process, so that I'm motivated to review the rationalization of this card, of this activity, after this expiry time actually expires, which is very important to me, because I believe that our companies change quickly, our world changes quickly, our domain changes quickly, and some process activity that was required during a certain time might not be required in half a year. So let's say we have our team storming phase, let's say from Scrum, where our team is just getting to know each other. No one knows how each person operates in certain language, etc. So we need more communication, I guess. We need maybe retrospectives meeting. Maybe we need to come and discuss every task when it's done, like mini retrospective, whatever. So there might be a solution to improve the communication during this storming phase. Will this solution still be required when the team operates fully? I doubt, but it needs to be checked. So I tend to review my processes every half a year.
If we can say that agriculture, farmer culture, yeah, for ages, for eons, for thousands of years, people were doing same thing: put some seeds in the ground, then they remove this. They get some potatoes. And you know the story that when potato, was kind of expanding to the world. Some people were not aware that you should eat this. Things inside the ground, but they started to eat green things, and they are kind of poisonous. But again, for ages, agriculture is there, and maybe there is no such a rational process behind them, but still things are going in that way because it's easier, first of all. Everyone, if you join the company, you know in 90% of the time that they would have this stand-up, all this
rituals, almost rituals,
but still you know what to expect. So it's people used to it.
That's the definition of ritual,
yeah. And it works in many. We still, our IT businesses keep running, and we have some revenue, other stuff. Probably in some you can tune this process to get a little bit more, or even a lot of more. But still, it's in average. It works in average. And you suggest to beat the system, to destroy the system, and asking like a teenagers, they always so rebellious. Why sky is so blue? We need to get rid of this. And you suggest to get rid of everything, and to ask every system.
Let's say there is PCI DSS conformance requirement. For PCI DSS, code review is required by the banks or whoever certify the PCI DSS implementation at your company. So you cannot rationalize that code review should be removed there, even if you don't find a single defect during last 10 years with code review there. So there are things that cannot be removed due to, again, rational reasons. So I do not suggest to destroy everything, but I suggest to become curious and to question why things are there. Because if we are curious, we increase the diversity of thought, and the diversity of thought is very important for us to be able to adopt to the ever-changing world, because the world is changing really fast. And if we have better diversity of thought, that's why you have all this Western diversity, cultural issues now, and cultural approaches now. More we are diverse, better we are.
The company is so big that you cannot change anything. So,
Yeah.
and there is no chance that small companies that they don't have time, they're rushing. They like, okay, tomorrow this code should be, yesterday this code should be already there. And big companies, they're so huge, enormous, and they just don't have. They're so fat. They don't. So turns out that we cannot change anything because we are trapped.
If we optimize what we're trying to do, then we can optimize on how. So basically, a small startup can try to dig into different directions and waste resources, or then they can find one direction and dig in this direction properly, thinking more than doing. Because again, removing code sometimes is more important than actually adding code.
Unfortunately, we have this human factor.
Yeah.
We have people on the places, and like backing up to Soviet era. Of course, there are some percent of really energetic, really people who want to change something, but some people, I would not say most of the people, they are probably lazy. They probably don't want to change anything. And have you been in the situation when you was inside the company, you was strive to change something, but you see these faces?
I've encountered four or five companies where I couldn't do anything due to resistance on the very top. So there was someone sitting there who didn't want to change his mindset, just the mindset, because I provided the arguments, I provided the proof why my changes, the changes that I wanted to implement were and would be beneficial for the company. But the person couldn't trust the arguments because we are irrational. I think Kahneman won his Nobel Prize for saying that we are not rational economical agents. We humans are not rational economical agents. So I think that it's even worse. I think that we are irrational most of the times. And so if we bring even a tiny little addition of rationality to our world, and we add scientific method and rationalization, etc., we can progress. Otherwise, we will just stop. That's my opinion.
If you are finding a new company for you, and you want to change the world, or at least some company, are there any like signs of this open-minded culture? Or if you would change your company, what questions would you ask to find this one?
I would ask a question about failures, because people who are more open to rationality usually are open to admitting their failures. So I usually love to ask questions like, what were your failures? Why you fired people, or why people fired you? Why you failed here? Why you failed there? What was your the biggest bug you did in production, and how you changed after that? Because if you admit openly that you are a human person, you have mistakes and you have errors, then chances are you are more rational, and chances are you will be more open to admitting that your current approach is not optimal, and maybe a new approach will be better for the company, for the team, for the tech that you run, etc.
IT, tech field, and ethics. How to find company that's and of course we used to big companies, and we're saying that, hey, if company's revenue is more than XXX in $1 billion, this company will not be ethical. Or so ethics, what is that in our field, in our case?
I would say that ethics, the definition, is a set of moral rules and guidelines that you follow. Every person has his own ethics, and I would say that it's very useful to understand, to try to reflect upon it, what your ethics are. For example, for me, it's very simple. I don't join microcrediting companies. I don't join porn. I don't join drug dealers or whatever. I don't join gambling companies. So companies which I believe affect my society in a bad way. That's my reasoning behind my ethics. For every person, reasoning is different, but I strongly suggest that every person comes up with his own ethical rules, and it's not for anyone else to judge. It's just for the person to start using these ethical rules as a baseline for comparing companies.
As a worker, as a professional, so I get money for my labor, for my brain, and other stuff, for my code. And like in some cases where you can choose, so there are two companies, same companies on the market with same like salary. Okay, I would choose some company that's closer to me in
Mhm,
case of ethics.
mhm.
But it's just a world. It's it's capitalism. They pay me if they pay me. I can say. I will not say, but just imagine average developer would say, okay, it's double the money. It's a double X from the market. Oh, of course, I will join this.
Some people won't steal money even if it's lying on the floor. Some people just don't. Then the society influences. More capitalistic, more libertarian the society, more individualistic you are, and more you care of yourself only. And then your ethics is more is the boundaries are wider for your ethics. If you live in in more socialist society, like let's say Germany or Russia, then your boundaries are narrower for the ethics. There are lots of different influences of different power, different influences that form your ethical rules, but you need to understand them in order to find a company which will be better for you.
Some people, for example, would say, okay, Google is a non-ethical company. They do a lot of things and I don't know, work for army or do something for army
Yeah,
or some
yeah, yeah.
politicians. And what do you think about ethics? So you've talked about like personal ethics. What do you think about society ethics or like universal ethics? Should we have
Oh,
it
it's
or it's
interesting.
yeah,
There, there
oversold?
was
It's
there was this categorical imperative, Kant's categorical imperative, where he said that the only way to unify ethics is by saying that you must follow just one rule: act as you want to be acted upon.
IT industry, tech industry. Is it different from any other industry that we had before or taking place right now?
I think it is. I think it's very young. It's what, 60 years only, right? Or 70 years, 60 or so. And as every young industry, it has its own silos, let's say. So we're like on a separate island. We are now trying to copy things from other industries. Kanban, let's say, or Kaizen approach, they all come from manufacturing
Mhm.
facilities. Rationalization culture, it came from manufacturing facilities. Proper management comes from first from the army, then from manufacturing. So everything is copied, but then the overall industry is so full with money and gold and bitcoins and everything that every single mistake can be just covered with money. So you as a manager, as a team lead, are not encouraged to increase the efficiency of your team, let's say to even double or triple it, because you can just hire 10 other guys or girls. It's easier for most of the companies.
What do you think in your life, for example, in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, will this be kind of because
Collapse?
yeah, will it collapse or
I don't
we
think
will
so.
see this heaven industry developing and everyone gonna be IT and we have huge salaries everywhere. So what's the future of our industry?
If I try to think of what's going to happen according to what's happening now, I would say that more and more the IT will dive and dig into our normal lives. So we have IoT now. Who would have thought 20 years ago that we would have smart smart kettles playing music or taking, I don't know,
Yeah.
orders for new tea from the internet? I think there are still plenty of things to connect.
We see more and more young and old and new people joining in. They kind of they dissolving. Right now we see even at schools, somewhere like at fifth grade, kids they started to learn JavaScript or something like this. So what's going to be with us, with IT guys?
I think we will have to learn how to teach, because it's not, as you rightfully said, we can't clone each other. So we need to be able to teach people properly.
Thank you very much, Vitaly. It was really insightful, and I always want to learn more from you because,
Thank you.
yeah, because I think it is always time for new thoughts or ideas.
Thank you
you
so
very much
much.
for your time. Thank you for being here.
It was a
and
pleasure.
hopefully to see you in the new one. And thank you for being with us. And see you in the next Pyjama Talk.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye. Have a good day.